Okay, so welcome to part two of the Democrat Party factions. So in the last video, we looked at the progressive left. We also introduced the New Democrat Coalition, or the DLC, these kind of moderates. So let's look at an example of someone in this particular faction of the Democrat Party. Oops, let me change the slides. So this is Senator Dianne Feinstein of California. Now, she's formally not in any caucus, but she's widely seen within the Democrat Party as being in the centre of the party. So therefore, she tends to share many of the opinions and views of people of these more kind of moderate end of the party. So she used to be pro-death penalty, but actually in recent years she's changed her mind on this. Which suggests perhaps a change in her views within American society. She did support Obamacare, and she does oppose extending it further. So in other words, as I said before, she thinks Obamacare is about right, essentially. She's very pro the environment, which again in California is probably a vote-winning issue as well. So she's very pro the environment. She does support gun restrictions, and she's very pro-Israel as well. She supported this pressure group called AIPAC, which told Obama to veto any resolutions that were one-sided against Israel. So she's very pro-Israel. She also supported Obama selling $1.5 billion worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia as well. And she's also voted to extend the Patriot Act, this law which Bush passed, which kind of increases the ability of the federal agencies to kind of do surveillance on people. She voted to maintain it, essentially. And she's also labelled Edward Snowden, the guy that's done all the WikiLeaks and stuff, as a traitor as well. So she seemed very much kind of in the middle of the Democrat Party. She is getting on a little bit now. There's lots of rumours that was she going to stand down, or will she be challenged in the next primaries by someone a bit more left-leaning. But she is in the centre of the party. And she reflects, as we said before, some of those different views we were discussing earlier on. Now, on the right of the Democrat Party, and some might say, therefore, in the political centre of American politics, arguably, are the so-called Blue Dog Democrats. They describe themselves as being fiscally conservative, i.e., tight with money, and socially progressive, which is what differentiates them from many Republicans. Most of them, but not all, are pro-choice, a woman's right to have an abortion or not. Most of them do oppose gun restrictions. Most of this group were against Obamacare. When Obama was president, there were quite a lot of Democrats in the Blue Dogs because the Democrats had a bit of a high watermark in terms of getting seats. And I think it was like 40 of them actually voted against Obamacare. It didn't help them because they lost their seats a year later anyway. Most of this group support Bush's tax cuts, although not all of them. And they're quite strong on national defence, and they tend to be quite hawkish as well. So, again, supporting the use of military abroad, supporting defence budgets, that type of thing. Within the Democrat Party, well, they were decimated in 2010. As I said before, there were 40 odd of them before the 2010 midterms, and they were decimated. Again, not surprising, because they represent the most conservative seats which Democrats have a chance of winning. And so when the Democrats are kind of doing well, they'll kind of go up the conservative seats, if that makes sense. But as soon as Democrats begin to do less well, then they tend to lose the more conservative seats first. Today there's 19 of them in the House, which is down 6 from the last Congress. Again, that shows the fact they didn't do as well, the Democrats, in the Congress of 2020 elections as they were expecting to, and they actually lost 6. And there's one senator who's formerly a member of this group, although quite a few clearly do have Blue Dog Democrat beliefs. And, for example, Joe Manchin, who we're going to meet in a minute or two. I noticed that my sister's House member, Abigail Spenberger of Virginia's 7th District, she's in both the Blue Dogs and in the New Democrat caucus. She's in both of them. And again, my sister's seat is one of these kind of Republican, one of these seats which leans Republican, really. And she just about clung on at the last election. So we're going to see what happens in 2022. Anyway, let's meet two of these characters. This lady is Senator Kirsten Sinema of Arizona. Okay. When she used to be in the House of Representatives, she was voted one of the most conservative Democrats. She voted against Nancy Pelosi being made Speaker, for example. In 2018, she was one of 3 Democrat senators to vote in favour of the tax cuts which Donald Trump introduced. She voted with Republicans against the Green New Deal. She does support tough immigration, perhaps not surprising given she represents Arizona, which borders on to Mexico. She does support gun restrictions, though, and she does support gay rights. She herself is bisexual. So, again, socially relatively liberal, but fiscally quite conservative. I think we'll probably sum her up. She's also been causing trouble for Joe Biden because she's refusing to support the $3 trillion the social safety net and climate bill, and she's been a bit vague as to her motives as to why she's been against it. Sometimes she said it's down to money, sometimes it's down to certain elements of it. The other thorn in the side of Joe Biden, some have said that this guy's perhaps the real president, is Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. We came across him on those videos you had to watch about elections. He's the guy with the gun who says supported by the National Rifle Association. West Virginia, a very Republican state. Arizona used to be, but it's becoming more Democrat. In fact, Joe Biden won Arizona. West Virginia, though, is a staunch conservative Republican state. 60-odd% of them voted for Donald Trump, for example. And so, therefore, it has to be quite conservative in order to keep winning in that area. He's actually pro-life. He's against abortion rights, interestingly. And he's also opposed to a law called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a law passed by Bill Clinton, which basically enabled homosexuals to join the military. People couldn't ask what someone's sexuality was, and people couldn't disclose their sexuality. Obama repealed that law to allow homosexuals into the military. Joe Manchin was against that. As I said a minute or two ago, he's been blocking Biden's social safety net and climate bill, partly over its cost. He wanted it to cost no more than $1.5 trillion. He's also concerned about the effects it might have on the coal industry. Coal is the main industry in West Virginia, and he stated very clearly that if it restricts the use of coal and coal power stations, then he'll vote against it. So the Democrats at the moment are all trying to find other ways to do climate stuff, like planting lots of trees and stuff, because they know that he's not going to back down. He also, in the past, under Obama, he opposed the Clean Water Act because he feared it would harm the coal industry, because obviously digging coal out leads to a lot of pollutants going into water and stuff. And he also, though, worked with Republican Senator Pat Toomey to impose checks on those buying guns. So he does have some restrictions on guns, interestingly. And he also wrote to Trump over his concerns about the use of Chinese-made steel in the United States as well. So again, you can see perhaps an industry and stuff is very much on this kind of conservative end, which again is reflecting the interests and concerns of West Virginia. In terms of how Democrats, a lot of the progressive left are really furious at Joe Manchin. However, given the state that he represents, no other Democrat would have a chance of winning West Virginia. And if he suddenly turned out to be some liberal type, then he would get annihilated at the next election. And to be fair to Joe Manchin, he does vote with the Democrats on quite a lot of things. He does vote with his own party on things like trade union rights and many aspects of Social Security as well. So he is the best they're going to get from a Democrat from West Virginia. And again, a lot of the moderate Democrats kind of recognise that. And he was clear from the start that he wasn't happy with such a big bill going through. Okay, I think this next slide about comparing the factions, I think I might do it on a third video. Yeah, I will do. So they are the 3 main factions then within the Democrat Party. And exam questions you might get might be based around which of the ones is the most dominant at the moment. And so A task which I want you to do in the near future will be to have a look at some of the policies of Obama and Biden, and have a look at, which faction is perhaps the strongest. I mean, I may have given you a hint by the fact that Joe Manchin has basically been blocking Joe Biden's legislation, which might suggest us, and that's because the Senate is on a knife edge, isn't it, 50-50, and so therefore Joe Biden needs every Democrat in the Senate to agree to his laws. But another issue which Joe Manchin's been causing issues over is Voting Rights Act. He said he'll only support a Voting Rights Act if it has the support of Republicans as well. So that's another issue which has been causing trouble for Joe Biden. Anyhow, I'll shut up there and I'll do a third video on comparing the factions between Democrats and the UK Labour Party.